"Can you be my date for one day?" the widowed CEO begged the waitress who reminded him of his wife. The cafe bell chimed softly as the tall man in the navy suit stepped inside, his presence commanding but heavy with something unspoken, grief. He didn't look like the kind of man who would come to a small-town diner. Yet there he was, staring blankly at the handwritten special of the day board. He looked lost, like someone searching for something, or someone. When his eyes met hers, the world seemed to pause. Maya froze mid-step. The man sitting at the corner booth wasn't just any customer. He looked exactly like someone out of place, too polished for their rustic cafe. But it wasn't his tailored suit or the gold watch that caught her attention. It was the look in his eyes, sad, deep, and tired. The kind of eyes that carried years of pain behind a carefully constructed smile. He looked up when she approached, and for a moment his expression shifted. His lips parted slightly, eyes widening in disbelief. "I'm sorry," he whispered almost to himself. You look just like her." Maya blinked, confused. "Like who, sir?" He gave a small, broken smile. "My wife." A soft silence settled between them. She didn't know what to say, and he looked like a man drowning quietly in memories. Finally, she managed a polite nod and took his order, a simple black coffee, no sugar, no cream. The kind of order someone gives when they're not really there to eat. That man was Alexander Reed, CEO of one of the largest real estate companies in the country. But no one would have guessed it from the way he sat there, shoulders slumped, staring into the steaming mug like it held the answers to his grief. 3 years had passed since the car crash that took his wife, Claire. 3 years since the light in his world went out. He had learned to smile for the cameras, to lead board meetings, to be the perfect executive, but not to live. And today, on what would have been their wedding anniversary, he had walked into that cafe just to escape the silence of his empty mansion. Maya returned to check on him later, and their small talk grew into a slow, hesitant conversation. She learned that he'd driven 2 hours from the city, just to think. He learned that she worked double shifts to pay for her younger brother's medical bills. 2 broken souls meeting by accident, or fate. Before leaving, Alexander looked at her again, as though trying to gather courage. "I know this will sound strange," he began, voice low and trembling. "But would you be my date? Just for one day?" Maya froze, caught between disbelief and sympathy. "Excuse me?" He swallowed. "Today was my wedding anniversary. I don't want to be alone, not tonight. You remind me of her, not just how you look, but how you talk, how you smile." He hesitated, ashamed. "I don't mean to offend you, I just need someone to sit with, even if just for a few hours." Maya should have said no. It was ridiculous, maybe even inappropriate. But something in his voice, something raw and honest, made her heart ache. She saw not a powerful CEO, but a lonely man clinging to memories, so she said softly, "Okay, just one day." They met that evening at a small lakeside restaurant. Alexander, for once, didn't wear the mask of the businessman. He was nervous, awkward even. Maya wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied loosely, looking nothing like his late wife, and yet somehow, everything like her in spirit. They talked for hours. About Claire, about love, about loss. "I keep thinking if I'd driven that night instead of her," Alexander said, his eyes glistening. "Maybe she'd still be here. Maybe I'd still know how to breathe without hurting." Maya reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "You can't change the past, but maybe you can stop letting it punish your future." Those words pierced him deeper than he expected. She didn't pity him. She spoke to him like someone who understood pain. And she did. Maya had lost her parents when she was 17, forced to raise her brother alone. She knew the taste of grief. When they left the restaurant, Alexander didn't want the night to end. "There's a park nearby," he said. "Claire and I used to go there and watch the city lights. Would you—" "Yes," she interrupted softly. "Let's go." They sat by the fountain, the night breeze cool and gentle. For the first time in years, Alexander laughed. Not the polite, empty kind, but real laughter. Maya smiled, realizing she'd done something rare. She'd made a man who'd forgotten how to live, feel alive again. But as midnight neared, the spell began to fade. He looked at her with quiet gratitude. "Thank you, Maya. You don't know what this means to me," she smiled sadly. "Maybe you just needed to remember how to feel again." He wanted to ask for another day, but he didn't. Some things were too sacred to repeat. He walked her home, and before leaving whispered, "You gave me a gift tonight. Hope." The next morning, Maya returned to work, unsure if she'd ever see him again. But fate had other plans. A week later, a black car stopped in front of the cafe. Alexander stepped out carrying a small bouquet of white lilies. He walked straight to her. "I tried to forget that night," he said quietly, "but I couldn't. You made me feel like I could breathe again. So, I'm asking you something, not as a CEO, but as a man trying to start over." Maya looked at him, heart pounding. "Would you have coffee with me? Just as yourself this time?" he asked with a hopeful smile. Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes, Alexander, I'd love that." As they sat together again, the same coffee between them, something unspoken began to heal in both their hearts. She wasn't his late wife, and he wasn't the man she'd lost in her own past. But together, they found something that looked a lot like a second chance. In the end, love didn't come back as a grand miracle. It came softly, through shared stories, quiet laughter, and two broken people brave enough to open their hearts again. And as Alexander looked at her across the table, her eyes kind, her smile real, he realized that sometimes the universe doesn't give you back what you lost. It gives you someone who helps you find yourself again. Because some souls don't meet by accident. They meet to remind each other that love, no matter how scarred, can still bloom twice.